I'd like you to imagine your dream life. See the version of you who has what you want to have, feels how you want to feel, and is who you want to be. I'm Brittany Hoops, your hypnotherapist and manifestation coach, and this is the show where I'll teach you to master the full power of your mind, to guide you on your journey towards destination manifestation.
Take a step back for the ones who can't
hello there, destination manifestation travelers. Welcome back. I'm so glad you're here. You know, it's funny. This show, it's destination manifestation, right? I call you all lovingly my travelers. So this episode is especially fitting for this show here today because we are going to talk about manifesting amazing, safe, worry-free travel experiences today. Now, it's not too often that I do an episode that's very specifically about one type of manifestation. I think I like to keep things a little bit more open-ended so it can apply to a lot of different manifestations. But this one has been coming up a lot lately. I would say that so many of us have a location or two or even 10 that we want to manifest that's sitting there on our vision boards. I know I sure do. I have a beautiful picture of Bora Bora where I went for my honeymoon. I want to go again. I can't believe it's been 8 years. I probably don't plan on actually going anytime soon, but I do manifest going back there and having that amazing trip again. And I'm sure there's some vacations or trips or travel experiences that you want to manifest here too. It's a major topic for manifestation. Well, what do you do if you have fears around how you'll get there? I mean, we know fear, anxiety, nervousness, these are not aligning emotions. These are not the kind of emotions that manifest you what you want, right? So it could be this fear, this resistance to, say, flying, for instance, that is keeping you from manifesting that amazing trip. And what a bummer would that be? I don't want that for you. And that's what we're going to focus on here today is how can we get over? How can we overcome? How can we release that resistance specifically around flying? Okay. Unfortunately, this topic is top of mind right now, more so than in recent history, at least if you're located here in the United States. It's very topical right now, which means that we're focusing on flight and plane safety more than we ever have before. I recently just did an Instagram little story poll with my audience to sort of ask, like, how are you guys feeling? I've been noticing an uptick in people coming to me for one-on-one hypnotherapy and coaching to overcome the fear of flying, given everything that's happening right now. How are you guys feeling? And over 75% of you guys, and I can't remember how many people responded to the poll, but it was a lot. I got close to 2,000 views on the story alone. Over 75% of you guys said you've either always been scared of flying or you're feeling more scared than usual right now, which was just kind of astonishing. And that made me think, oh, I need to do a podcast episode about this. We don't need to be scared of flying if we don't want to be scared of flying. Let's help our subconscious minds get on board with this if that's in alignment to our dreams. So I always find it so interesting, especially when I think about, okay, how you guys are responding on Instagram, what I notice in terms of trends and different things that are happening in terms of the topics that my one-on-one hypnotherapy and coaching clients want to work on. You know, it's funny. A couple years ago, I used to work with tons of weight loss clients. Now I hardly have any weight loss clients. I still have a few, but there's Ozempic. Not as many weight loss clients come to see me anymore. Then you see something like this. Trump comes into office. We have tons of these, flight safety concerns now, and everyone's coming to see me and, reaching out to hypnotherapy to overcome the fear of flying. It's just kind of crazy how you notice, impacts in society, how they can sort of change our attitudes to what we want to address in our lives. So crazy. Anyways, just like all of that nuance and sort of gray area that we had to hold so dearly in last week's episode, I'm going to ask you to use your nuance skill again in this week's episode, okay? There is a lot of nuance when it comes to this topic too. So let's just start by putting it into perspective. Sound good? I want to sort of look at it through three different lenses, okay? Let's start with the conscious mind. I'll talk to your conscious, logical, reasoning mind first. Then we'll look at it from a manifestation point of view. Then we'll look at it from a subconscious mind point of view. Sound good? All areas of the brain will be firing here today in today's episode, okay? So yes, conscious mind. Trump and Elon Musk have fired hundreds of Federal Aviation Administration employees since Trump has taken office earlier this year, okay? So I was kind of curious. We're reading the headlines about this. We know this to be true. If we just look at the past 2-ish months, okay, what does airline safety really look like? Well, the U.S. airspace saw around 2 to 3 million flights so far this year. That's in January and February 2025. As of the date that I did this research was like a day ago. Let's see, today I'm recording on the 27th. So that was like the 25th, 26th as I was doing this research, okay? So that's assuming on average that there's about 45,000 flights per day, roughly 60 days. That's 2.7 million. Okay. So in that same period of time, there were only a handful of true, what we would consider crashes. Some of the examples might be the fatal Potomac River midair collision. In Philadelphia, there was a medevac crash, the Alaska crash. There was a runway incident in Scottsdale. You might have heard about some of these, okay? Roughly 4 major accidents that ended in an aircraft going down. Here's where I want to kind of press the pause button for a second, okay? Even though I'm a super positive thinking manifestation coach, that's what I do for a living, right? By no means do I want to, A, deny that these things have happened or can happen because they did and they do, or B, diminish their importance, okay? We can look at stats, but that doesn't mean that if there was, we won't want to say, well, it's only 4. You know who doesn't care about that one bit? The people who passed away due to these crashes, the family members and the friends that they left behind, the workers who were on the clock during those crashes, and now they have to live with the fact that it happened on their watch. Like, there's so much impact, even if it's 4 out of 2.7 million, okay? And I think that's where the nuance comes in, right? That's the nuance. Our job today is to find a balance with that, right? We don't want to be so consumed with what has happened in the past and to assume that it's going to happen in the future and assume that that's the experience we're going to create. Because if you do that, then yes, you will manifest that. You will experience it. We also don't want to be like la-di-la-di-la in Delulu land, too much, because those things did happen. And to act like they aren't important or they don't matter or to give excuses for them really negates, those people that were involved in those incidents. So I think this is where we find a balance, where we can look at the past, we can look at the present and be in the present moment, and we can align ourselves to a future that we want to experience and we want to create. That goes for thinking about flying, and really that goes for anything with manifestation. There's a popular saying in manifestation, Delulu is the Salulu, and it's cute. I love it. Meaning that to be delusional is the solution to manifesting. And there's nuance there too, right? Because being delusional on one hand can be really great. Accepting what others might consider delusional, a delusional mindset, can help many people believe in really big dreams. There are so many naysayers out there that are going to say, well, that's delusional for you to think that you could make, a 7-figure salary, or that's delusional for you to think that you could be on a CBS reality TV show. No one ever does that, right? And so sometimes we have to, think in quote unquote delusional ways in order to believe in big dreams. There's also the other side of delusion, right? Where you can't just believe that you'll sprout wings and fly and jump off a building and have that be true. There are universal laws that are in place. We live in a 3D physical gravity environment, right? There are laws. And so that's kind of where the dark side of delusion can kind of come in, that we don't want to cross. We have to find that balance. So delusion taken too far can be just downright dangerous. That's where it changes from delusion to danger, right? So we have to find that balance. And that's why manifestation is filled with so much nuance, and there are no absolutes, and you have to look at it from all these different perspectives, and it's important to, right? So I want to offer you a different way to think about air travel here today, okay? So that you can decide what feels best to you. There might be some things we discuss that don't resonate with you. There might be some things that really do. What I'm trying to help you is see it from so many different perspectives that you can then decide what you want to create in your life, because that's alignment, is decide what feels good to you. So anyways, I felt it really important to preface this conversation with that, right? So yes, there have been 2.7-ish million flights over the past 2 months in the US. And yes, around 4 of those at the time of my research were true crashes. Also, yes, this feels like more than in recent years. You know, I've seen some posts online and I think they're well-meaning. At least that's the intention I'm hoping are behind them, but they're not really helpful, right? Because they are saying things like, well, guys, air travel is way safer over the past 10 years compared to what it was before, blah, 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 right? And then you go to the comment section and people are livid in the comment section, and perhaps rightfully so, because that point doesn't account for the nuance that there's been a very recent uptick here due to layoff decisions that didn't necessarily need to happen, due to government officials that are supposed to make us safer and make society a better place to live in, and instead are making decisions that are leading to an increased sense of danger, right? So looking at past data doesn't account for that. It doesn't look, we got to look at 2025 so far. Otherwise, it doesn't feel helpful. It doesn't put our minds at ease. Also, yes, all of this is getting a lot of media attention. And the media headlines like to use a lot of scary, a lot of very descriptive words in an effort to hijack the part of your brain that is called the amygdala. It's the primary area that facilitates your fight or flight response. It makes you feel that fear. Just for example, as I was doing research for this episode, I saw one headline that called the FAA layoffs a bloodbath. I mean, guys, that is so intentional. Here we aren't even talking about what happens in a plane crash. We're talking simply about people losing their jobs, which is, yes, a negative thing, but they don't lose their blood in that process, okay? And yet when you use a term that is so loaded like bloodbath, it really elicits fear. It's what we would consider the opposite of a euphemism, right? A euphemism is when you try to use a more polite term to describe something. It's a dysphemism, which is where you use a harsher word to describe something, okay? And that harsher word is meant to capture your attention so that you want to click that article and read more and they get paid money, right? We have to be cognizant of this, because when we know that when things get our attention, they then grow in importance in our brains. And we know this neuroscientifically. I think we talked about this last episode, if I recall. That's one of the reasons why, for manifestation, why it's so important for us to focus more on what we want and less on what we don't want to experience. Because we want we want to train our brains to think, yes, those dreams, the thing that I want, that travel, that really great experience, that perfect, photograph I'm going to take at the top of the mountain, whatever it is, right? We want that. We want our brains to think that is more important than our obstacles. So if we go back to just looking at the past 60 days, right? We divide 4 by 2.7 million. We times it by 100. That gives us roughly a 0.000, that's 3 zeros, 15% chance of being in a plane crash here in the US in 2025 so far. The overwhelming majority, that's 99.999, that is 3 nines, 85, 99.99985% of planes landed safely and successfully. Okay? I don't share that figure, and you guys know me by now, especially my personal political affiliations. I don't share that figure to give Trump or Elon a pass whatsoever. No, 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 no. I share that because that's the current stat. Okay? We're taking a moment to speak to your conscious mind here. How you decide to interpret that stat is entirely up to you. You might personally not be comfortable with anything less than 100%, pure perfection, right? Then that would be good for you to know about yourself. 99.99985% might be a risk that you're willing to take. You and I and everyone who's listening to this are all going to be unique. We're all going to have a certain threshold for how much risk we're willing to take on, right? Because Lord knows it's much higher than 0.00015% of the news articles about plane travel these days that talk about the danger. And that's where I want to kind of put this into perspective, is that we're seeing it a lot more percentage-wise than it is happening percentage-wise, right? And that's important because that's how things can be blown out of proportion to the importance in our brain, the salience network that decides what's important in our brain. Now, keep in mind, aviation incidents, which, some sources are going to report those in higher numbers, right? Could include minor mishaps, anomalies, things that don't actually result in an aircraft being lost. You could still very well experience what you would consider a scary incident, but it ends up going okay. You're okay, you survive, maybe you're a little jumbled, maybe you were a little scared, but the aircraft wasn't lost, right? So these stats that I'm sharing with you are just focused on the true crashes where the plane goes down, which theoretically is the actual thing that folks fear in air travel and want to avoid. So let's just put this in perspective even more, okay? That 0.0015%, that is a similar chance to you being dealt a full royal flush and a 5-card poker deck. Okay? A plane crash, as of this moment, is a 1 in 666,666 chance. Which, how do you want to interpret that? Are those really aligned numbers or are those the devil's numbers? You decide, which is kind of funny, right? But getting a royal flush simply from those cards just being dealt to you, just from the get-go, is roughly a 1 in 649,740 chance. So very close to the plane crash odds, right? One is a much better outcome than the other, but you can kind of put it in perspective that way. Let's also think of it a different way. Air travel isn't the only way that you can travel to go on vacation. If you've been manifesting a trip, right? You could also drive. Now, being involved in a severe car crash, meaning one that's going to cause major injury, significant vehicle damage, or death, the odds of that in any given year in the US right now are roughly 0.5%. So half of a percentage point. Let's compare these here real quick, okay? 0.5 compared to 0.00015% for planes right now. Interesting, right? And yet, we might not even bat an eye when it comes to going on that road trip. And I think there's a really interesting reason for this. It's because driving in a car is so much more familiar to our brains. Most of us do it nearly every day. We have a lot of built up evidence in our minds of all those past car rides we've gone on that did not result in that 0.5% outcome, right? We have a greater sense of what the 99.5% of safety feels like to us. So a lot of folks who fear air travel, they might prefer to travel by car, even though technically the act of doing so increases your actual risk of the scary thing. The brain likes familiarity, which is one of the reasons why hypnotherapy is so successful, because it is the deliberate practice of getting your brain familiar with what you want to manifest. And, that could include getting your brain familiar with the kind of travel experience that you want to have, that you want to manifest. That's what we do when we do hypnotherapy to overcome the fear of flying. We envision We practice, we get the brain familiar with that safe, happy, relaxed flight, and we do it again, and we do it again, and we do it again. We want to make that experience super familiar to the brain. We want to help our brain become familiar with the 99.99985% experience of air travel. So, I don't know about you, but that is enough conscious mind logic for me right now. You know I'm not a conscious mind girly. I love the manifestation and the subconscious piece of things. So let's look at this from a manifestation point of view and then the subconscious, okay? Let's take manifestation first. It all comes back to one of my favorite topics, a topic that comes up again and again, and you will hear me talk about it till I'm blue in the face. It's about embracing faith over fear. Okay. And in this case, we're talking about the fear of flying. So if you want to overcome a fear of flying and you want to manifest amazing, life-changing travel and experiences, it's about living from that space, faith over fear, letting faith have more of your heart and more of your mind space and be more important to you and getting more of your attention than the fear is allowed to have. It's simply a balancing act. And this applies to so many things, right? So many things, even just beyond travel. Fear has this tricky way of making us take things so seriously. And this is biological. This is evolutionary. Fear makes us place more importance on something, which can have the effect of blowing it out of proportion compared to its true threat level. And it does this because it thinks, oh my gosh, if I direct her brain to really focus on this and to think it's really important, that's going to keep her safe by making that potential threat level feel very important so that you'll pay attention to it. And that's the brain's main MO, right? It wants to keep you safe. But it's with all that clenching, all that controlling, all the absolutes, the black and white thinking, the non-nuanced thinking that it somehow convinces us that we aren't able to get through anything. And that's simply not true. We are so much more resilient than we ever give ourselves credit for. We can get through so much. So how would you move if you find yourself consumed by fear, especially the fear of flying? How do you move from a mindset of predominantly fear and into one filled with faith? Well, I'll direct you. I'll direct you to the bridge. Surrender is the bridge between faith and fear. It takes you from fear to a place of faith. You know, I used to have this reoccurring dream that happened all the time, like literally since I was a kid, okay? And in this dream, I just would be falling down this infinite black hole. I mean, it was very scary. I hated the dream. Every time I had this dream, I would thrash around. I would fight it. I would try to hold on to something to keep me from falling. I'd be grasping at the edges of this endless tunnel just for something that I could hold on to keep me from falling. The uncertainty surrounding not knowing what was going to happen to me as I was falling, or even worse, like when I stopped falling, when I hit the ground, which was my assumption, I just assumed and felt like I was going to die. Like that's what the dream was. It was just this impending sense of doom that, something was wrong. I was going to die. I was unsafe. The brain does that with uncertainty sometimes. Like it's uncertainty, meaning we don't know what's going to happen, but yet the brain assumes the worst. It assumes certainty within uncertainty. Even the very nature of uncertainty is that we don't know. So yeah, it could be bad, but it could very well be good. We don't know. That makes it uncertain. If it was certain, then we would know, but we don't. So, you know me. After having this dream a few times, I'm a subconscious mind junkie, okay? I know the roles of dreams. I know how dreams are our mind's way of symbolically trying to process the events and the emotions in our lives, right? I wanted to try something. So I set the intention, next time that I had this dream, I just simply wasn't going to fight it anymore. It was a dream. I wasn't going to fight it. I planned to implement a little bit of lucid dreaming sort of tactics in there, and I was simply just going to surrender, just to allow myself to fall and just see what happens. Because I was falling anyways, right? I couldn't stop the falling. So let's just go with the flow. Let's see what happens. And guys, wouldn't you know, once I did that in the next dream, of course, I landed safely. And not only did I land safely, but I reached this beautiful place. a place I wouldn't have been able to get to, a place that would have taken so much longer to get to had I not allowed myself to surrender and fall into it. You see, like fear can keep us from so much good. And with air travel, I guess one of the deepest fears could be that the plane may crash and you may die. And yes, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There's a non-zero chance that could happen. There's a 0.00015, right? Was that the stat? 1/5 chance that could happen? Just like there's a non-zero chance that you could die at any moment, in any day, in a car, on a plane, on a bus, eating green eggs and ham. I don't know. I sound like Dr. Seuss, don't I? Right? You could be walking down the street. You could be picking your nose, right? I mean, any moment. That is simply the nature of being human. Welcome to human experience. Welcome to the 3D. There's death, just like there's life, just like there's birth. We're all going to die at some point. No one is exempt from it, and at least not yet, right? But we can't allow that to keep us from living. And I know that's so cliche, but if it kept us from living, then we wouldn't be living the life that we've been holding on to so dearly anyways. And that in itself, I would say, is a form of death. Yeah, sure. It's the dead among the living. It's the people who aren't living and yet they're still technically alive. That's a form of death. And so I think when we look at this from a manifestation, from a spiritual point of view, I want to dive even deeper into that book that I mentioned last episode. And, it's kind of funny. This episode's kind of becoming like a part 2 of my last episode. And so if you're interested, the last episode was a conversation on dancing with destiny and unlocking the hidden art of co-creation. I totally didn't intend for this to be a part 2 of that episode. They just really pair very nicely together. But last week, so go and listen to that if you haven't already. But last week, I briefly mentioned this book that I absolutely love. It's called The Journey of Souls by Michael Newton. Okay. He was an amazing past life regression hypnotherapist. He conducted hundreds of past life hypnotherapy sessions, and he converted those sessions into case studies. And he reported on these case studies in various books. Super interesting. But here's what he uncovered specifically through these sessions about the reoccurring patterns he noticed when it came to the afterlife. Okay, let's dive into what he learned. He learned that dying is not an end. It's simply a transition. Okay, it's like opening a door and stepping on through into another room. And I want you to think of it this way. What if that door only unlocks once we've come to Earth to do what we intended to do and we've completed that task? What if otherwise that door's locked? And no matter what you do, I guess I can't say no matter what you do, because we know that there's some things that will very much specifically lead to death. But what if, no matter what situation you might otherwise, healthily put yourself in, that door's locked and you're okay? That you're going to stay alive until you fulfill your soul's purpose. I mean, just think about that. What if the door remains locked until you fulfill your purpose? And then once you do that, that's when the door unlocks. But it's okay now for you to step through it because you came here to do what you meant to do. And that's the only reason you were here anyways. I mean, personally, that thought brings me a lot of peace. And you guys can choose to borrow this mindset or not, if it's helpful or not to you. But for me, when it comes to manifestation and my soul's purpose and my safety, I really do have a strong belief that I will not be taken off this earth if it is not my time. Like the door to that afterlife is going to remain locked until I fulfill my purpose. So personally, I don't fear flying on planes because I know that there are more things for me to do here on earth. It's not my time. That door is locked. And if that door were to unlock, that would be my signal that I fulfill my purpose. I came here to do what I'm meant to do. And it's okay to step on through. And, when it is my time, and since it will eventually be all of our times, that's okay. That means that we accomplish what we set out to do in this lifetime. I don't know about you guys. Just sit with that. Just noodle on that for like a little bit. That brings me a tremendous amount of peace and acceptance. When boarding a plane or really when doing anything within healthy reason. And I want you to remember what we talked about last week, right? You have your job, which in this case is living out your purpose, right? And that might include making some really amazing memories with your friends and your family, exploring new continents, new countries, new places, whatever it might be. That might include travel. You have your job, and the universe has its job. God has its job. When and how you leave this earth, that's the universe's job. The universe is the only one that has the key to your door, okay? So your job is to fulfill your purpose here on earth in this lifetime. And when it's time for you to go, you'll go. The door will unlock, you'll open it, and you'll simply step up through that door. And you can decide to resist it or not. But resisting it, like really anything we resist in life, simply only serves to make it a more painful experience for you. And do you want to create that? I just want to make sure if you're creating that you're doing that on purpose. You're saying, yep, I want more pain. Because I think a lot of us create it and we don't want to create more pain. And we think we're avoiding pain by creating that experience, but we're actually creating more of it. Surrender makes this whole life experience so much more enjoyable. And so if this is a lesson that as you're listening to my words here right now, you notice your butt sort of like clenching as I talk about this, I highly recommend that you also read the book called Loving What Is by Byron Katie. Okay, let's just look at the title here. Loving What Is. This book helps you reach a greater sense of acceptance and to truly recognize the liberation that comes with surrender and acceptance, especially when it comes to accepting those things that you cannot control, those things that are not your job, the things that are the universe's job, God's job, source's job, whatever you want to call it. So when we die, according to the journey of souls, okay, it's simply a passage from one phase of existence to another. And our soul, the part of us that is ever present, that always lives, all it does is sort of detach from this physical body and it leaves the 3D material world in which it experienced this lifetime, right? Now, you're a manifester, okay? I know who you are. You know this already. You know what it's like to leave behind the 3D physical world and to believe and to shape other forms of existence on different planes. We play around with the non-physical energy all the time. That's what we do as manifestors each and every day. This is what we do when we go into a state of hypnosis. We play around with non-physical energy. So this should be very familiar to you. This is not scary to someone like you, especially if you've been listening and implementing what I teach here on the show, right? So once you detach from the physical after death, and then you move into the non-physical, the spiritual realm, where the soul then has the opportunity to undergo a period of healing and evaluation. Now, oftentimes people express that they're greeted by loved ones that can kind of help them make that transition, which I think is so comforting, so beautiful. I wonder ooh, who's going to show up for me someday, and help walk me over through the door, that's going to be kind of fun. And it's in this state, and we talked about this piece last episode, but it's in this state where you then are able to review the life you just lived, that past life, right? The one that just concluded. You examine all the lessons that you learned. You look at all the challenges you faced. You look at the growth you achieved then. I mean, it's kind of like, you remember those old parent-teacher conferences that your teachers used to do with your parents? Only in this case, the teacher is your soul guide, right? The review is intended to be a healing process, but it's also a way to understand your soul's journey, this iteration of your soul's journey, this up-leveling that your soul just experienced through this lifetime. We talked about this last week. Your soul gets multiple attempts, multiple lifetimes to learn this lesson, however many you need, okay? And some people need more than others per lesson. There are lessons that might take multiple lifetimes for you to fully learn. So at this point in juncture, after you've passed, you review what you've accomplished in this go around, and then you're guided by those spiritual guides and those mentors to go and rejoin your soul group. And a soul group is kind of a group of other souls with whom you share a really deep and karmic connection to. And I just really love this idea. I almost kind of picture it. This is just like my own weird mind picturing it this way, but I almost kind of picture it like a little strand of grapes. How there's a bunch of different grapes, like each grape is a different soul in this little pod, right? So you create these little pods of souls of people that you share experience and lessons with across lifetimes. And then you swap out roles in each incarnation. So like the soul of your current mom, she might come as your daughter in the next life, or your current husband may show up as your best friend in the next life, or that coworker that you really don't like. Well, you got a lesson you got to learn with her. She's going to be your sister in the next life, and you're going to have a really strained relationship that you need to heal. I don't know. I'm making this up, but like you want to see things. Your soul wants to experience things and learn things and overcome challenges from different perspectives. Okay. So these souls come together to take on these different roles to learn from these various perspectives. It's kind of the same thing that happens with your gender or your gender expression. You might decide to be a girl in one lifetime. Then you want to see what life is like to learn this as a boy across different lifetimes, just to gain perspective, just to understand. So once you rejoin this soul group, it's here where you end up receiving insight, where you choose the lessons that you're going to conquer and learn in your next incarnation. And this is where you begin to plan your future life path. What's the next life going to be like? And I believe, if I recall from the book, that this process, deciding to jump into your next life, this process can be of various lengths for various souls. Not everyone wants to jump right back into Earth immediately. Some sooner than others, right? But you realize that ultimately death, as we know it here as humans on Earth, is just one step in an ongoing cycle of reincarnation. Your soul continues to evolve. It continues to learn. It continues to progress through successive lives. And so you can think of death kind of like stepping through that door, like I mentioned before. Or you might even think of it kind of like a high school graduation, You might initially be sad. Oh, this chapter is coming to a close, right? But unless you're that guy who was the star quarterback in high school that won't shut up about the good old days, you eventually move on, right? You take what you learned, you apply it to the rest of your life, you apply it to college, to adult life, and beyond. You move forward. And so I find this all very comforting. If I think about, okay, whether, when I go and whatever way I might go, that it's just a stepping stone. There's something next to step to. And even though we haven't experienced it yet, or we don't remember that experiencing, unless you're, in a past life regression, in a state of hypnosis, that's kind of what's in store for you. So do I think you need to have total acceptance of this process that I just outlined in order to fly on a plane? No. Do I think you need to be 100% okay, like I'm good to die, to manifest amazing vacations or travel? No. But I do know that some people find peace in this information, right? Some people find it peaceful to know that their soul, who they truly are, lives on. And so even if they were to encounter the 0.00015% worst case scenario, that it would just merely be the difference between opening one door and moving into another. And so since there is that non-zero risk, even though that risk is infinitesimally small, thinking of it this way can help, can put your mind at ease. Relying on your spiritual understanding on life and death can help. So let's now move into some of the subconscious mind techniques and methods that we can use to release the fear of flying. This is what I really love, because this is the really tactical part, right? I want to help you get into your own alignment around those amazing travel experiences that you want to manifest. Now, there's a hypnotherapeutic technique that I developed that's actually based on a principle that we've talked about on the show before, but that originated, at least in my awareness, from one of my favorite manifestation teachers, Abraham Hicks. I talk about Abraham all the time because I love their teachings on manifestation. And so with this hypnotherapeutic technique, we spend our time training our brain to move out of the vibration of the problem, which in this case would be the fear of the flying, and into the vibration of the solution, which would be that amazing trip and the experiences that you'll have with family and friends. Now, I developed my own process to help someone go from the vibration of the problem that they feel stuck in into the vibration of the solution. And that's because hypnotherapy is such a great tool for that. We talked about how do you move from faith to fear? Well, it's surrender. Surrender's the bridge, right? And hypnotherapy, because it's the tool, works because it's the tool that helps you surrender. Relaxation is the mind's version of surrendering, right? And so I do this technique with my one-on-one clients all the time, but I do plan on including a variation of this technique in my upcoming Manifested Me Vault. The Manifested Me Vault, it's going to be a manifestation hypnotherapy audio subscription library that I'm launching here in the next few months. If you've been listening to the show, you know I've been sharing about it. I'm so excited. In this Manifested Me Vault, this particular technique that I'm talking about of moving from the vibration of the problem into the vibration of the solution, it's going to be in the vault to help you manifest miracles. But if you want to apply it to the fear of flying or manifesting travel in any sort of way, just let me know. If I get enough of a response from you guys saying, yes, I want to experience it in that way, I will certainly add an audio for that too. Because the technique can really be moved or can be used in so many different ways, whether you're manifesting miracles or more money or, any problem solution that you can envision, you can use it for. And that's why we use it. And I use it so many times with my one-on-one clients, because if you want a more in-depth, curated, personalized version for your specific circumstances, we can work one-on-one together on that too. Now, moving from the vibration of worrying about that plane crash versus the vibration of alignment and excitement to your travels and the friends and family you get to spend time with and the life memories that you get to create means that you have to look for more reasons to surrender into fun. I mean, picture it like this, one of those old law balance beams. You know what I'm talking about? Like where they have the little chains and you put the little weighted blocks on the platforms. I don't know if I'm doing a good job of explaining this, but essentially there needs to be more focus on the fun aspects and less focus on the fear. There needs to be more focus on the faith and less on the fear. So let's stack up faith and fun on one side and fear on the other, and we have to find a way to outweigh it. And that's what we do to manifest. That's manifestation in its basic components. I want you to tune into that manifestation of yours, your desire to travel and explore. Okay? Ask yourself this. What feels fun to you? I mean, heck, if journeying across the country on a bike feels fun, by all means. If driving feels fun, great. Just know that if flying doesn't feel fun right now, I want you to tune into the reason why. Okay? Why? Why doesn't it feel fun? And I want you to take a really good hard look at that reason why. Is your reason why a fun fact or a story? I'll give you an example of the difference, okay? A fact of your reason why would be like, I don't want to fly on a plane because I just really enjoy traveling alone. I love being alone with my thoughts. I love the feeling of an open window, of the wind through my hair, and the long stretch of highway before me. Like, that's just super aligning to me. Okay, so if you tell me that, I say, okay, I understand. That's an experience. Unless you're a pilot with your very own plane, you really couldn't have that experience with air travel, even if you tried. And even then, with the wind going through your hair, probably not a good idea. So that would be a fact. It would be a preference of yours that is rooted in fun and alignment. Great. Now, a story reason might sound something like this. I just prefer not to die, so I think driving would be more fun. You feel the difference there? Okay. First of all, that's not inherently true. In fact, we already talked about it from a statistical perspective. Driving's more dangerous currently than air travel is. So that debunks a lot of that statement. So I'm drawing your attention to this because I want you to catch yourself. I want you to make sure that it's not a limiting belief or an assumption that's driving your decision and you're calling it alignment. Okay, that's like, I can't think of an analogy, but don't they say like putting lipstick on a pig or something like that? Like no, so many times we can convince ourselves like, oh, this is aligning, but really we're just trying to outrun our fear. And that's not aligning at all. So that's limiting. And you're limiting your alignment and what you can experience in life when you give into those limiting beliefs that are just stories. So here's the good news, though. If it's a story that's holding you back, yay, because we can work on rewriting a story. Stories are designed to be rewritten. And that's what we do in hypnotherapy every single day. So you want to decide what mode of transportation is most in alignment with the experience that you want to create. And we want to set aside any old stories that might be getting in your way about that. And we'll address those one by one. There has to be more energy put towards the vibration of the solution, the vibration of achieving that successful trip and going on it, than the vibration of fearing the mode of travel or those old stories. That's what we're aiming for. So that's one hypnotherapeutic technique that you can use, okay? When it comes to the subconscious mind, I've also noticed some patterns across the many, many, many one-on-one hypnotherapy and coaching clients I've worked with on overcoming the fear of flying. I often find that it just runs deeper than just simply not wanting to board a plane, okay? There's kind of two main patterns I've noticed the most, although, everyone's individual and unique, right? Many people who fear flying also fear losing control in many different areas of their lives. Oftentimes, it's not just the fear of flying that they have. They might fear natural disasters, weather events. They might fear their own health declining or the health or safety of their loved ones. That begins to tell me that it's not just the fear of flying. The fear of flying is the symptom, right? The real true cause here is the fear of losing control. Okay? It's not the airplane that scares them. It's the fact that they aren't driving and directing or flying that airplane themselves. Now, another pattern I notice here too is that they often have other fears, like what other people may think about them. So part of the fear of flying is also the fear of their own reaction on that flight and how others may perceive that reaction. Okay? If they have a propensity to scream or cry or have a panic attack on the plane, that might have been really embarrassing for them the first time that happened, when they felt like they couldn't control that emotional reaction. And they might now fear, what are others going to think about them? Or would I happen to ruin other people's experience of their flight or make them scared by my reaction, right? And so that becomes part of the driver of wanting to avoid that plane ride. It's not that they want to avoid travel. It's they want to avoid being embarrassed or drawing attention to themselves in a negative light. So there are so many different techniques that we use to address these patterns. One of my favorite techniques and most effective techniques is the rewind technique. I've talked about it here on the show before. It is great for people who've experienced a traumatic event or even events that might have led to a particular fear. We use it to help people process trauma. We help to process different emotions that can be surrounding maybe a particularly bad flight that they had or a bad experience where they reacted on a flight, whatever it might be. I also use this technique for clients who suffer from PTSD, trauma, any number of phobias, you name it. And why it works and why it makes sense is because think of it this way. PTSD or a phobia, like the fear of flying, it's essentially a bad form of hypnosis. Really, when you think about it, you experience that event. Let's just say you had a really turbulent flight that made you really scared in that moment. All of a sudden, boom, your brain has created a pattern. That pattern quickly imprints on the brain of, oh my gosh, I'm on a flight. This isn't safe for me, right? Creates an instant pattern. Which, hypnosis is the same thing as creating patterns. And then this pattern continues to fire on each subsequent flight that you go on. Now, research has shown that people who suffer from long-term post-traumatic stress disorder are also people who are really good at responding to hypnosis because their brains are really good at creating patterns. And I find that they're really good hypnotic subjects because hypnosis is designed to help you create patterns in the brain too. It's just what we're doing is we're creating new patterns that are beneficial to you, patterns of being on a flight and feeling calm and at ease. So if you're good and your brain is good at creating patterns, hypnosis is going to be great for you. Which means that we can use good hypnosis, deliberate hypnotherapy to treat this, right? I mean, think of it this way. If you have a pattern that's created just like in a matter of seconds, it really shouldn't take too much longer than that to unlearn it. I mean, that's just kind of the logical conclusion. So the rewind technique is actually really super interesting to understand neuroscientifically as well, okay? It then allows another part of the brain, which we call the hippocampus, to calm the amygdala down. Remember how we talked about how the amygdala plays a vital role in our fight or flight response? So this technique allows the experience or the event, like that bad, turbulent plane ride, whatever caused that fear of flying, it allows it to now become a normal memory rather than this memory that's very hot to the touch and very quote unquote important to the amygdala and is giving it a lot of excess attention. Okay. I kind of like to think of it, and I use this analogy with my clients all the time. That memory is like a stove that's turned on and it's hot. You touch that stove, ow, you get burned, right? And so what we do with this technique is we just turn off the stove. We allow the stove of that memory to cool down. So now when you touch the stove, it's just touching metal. It's no big deal. It's just like any old memory, just like what you ate for lunch yesterday. You remember it, of course, if you can remember, if you have good short-term memory. My short-term memory is not always that great, but it's just normal. And therefore it doesn't cause you any more panic or any more anxiety or any more flashbacks. So you don't no longer fear it, which is kind of the name of the game, right? It's just something that happened. And so we want those old instances to no longer be hot to the touch. We don't want them to cause fear. We want them to just be old memories again. And so when we move them out of the amygdala, which tells the brain, this is important, we need to give this attention, I'm in danger, and we move it into the hippocampus where normal memories are typically processed, and that's when we can start seeing a difference in how we feel about them. And the great thing about a technique like this is that it's super comfortable to experience. In no way does it require, anyone to confront that time head on. Most of my clients find it deeply relaxing throughout. And afterwards, they're able to think about that old fear of flying. And they just kind of feel like, yeah, that's in the past. Just like, I used to wear diapers when I was a baby. Do I wear diapers now? No, I've grown up. That's in the past, right? That's the usual experience that most people have when when we implement this technique. Okay. Memories or phobias that are locked in that fight or flight amygdala part of the mind. And then after this process, they're reconsolidated. The memory feels distanced. It feels no longer painful. Of course, they'll always know that it was, bad at the time. I still have a bad memory of my senior year prom. I asked a guy out and he said, no, that's still a bad memory, but do I cry about it every day? No, it's no longer hot to the touch. So we're not like erasing memories here. We're just putting them where they belong. We're putting them back on the shelf. We're cleaning them up, right? It's a very deep technique and it's a very advanced technique, although you can be a complete beginner at hypnosis and experience it. But we essentially fast forward and rewind through events in a very safe and distanced way so that those memories can be reconsolidated in the subconscious mind. Really cool stuff. Okay, so that is typically, depending on the client, it's always different depending on the client, but that is a good first line defense for many people. Another great technique is something that we call an affect bridge. So there's various ways that you can go about this technique too. But essentially, this affect bridge lets you go back into a specific memory and then replay it the way that you would have wanted it to go. Okay. Now you might be thinking, how in the world, Brittany, does that help? Well, guess what? Your imagination that you utilize in this is part of the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind cannot differentiate between the past and the present, okay? Or even the future. We talked about that last episode. So when your brain learns a pattern of fear from the past, it's kind of like it's going over to the shelf, it's dusting off that old oldie record, and it's putting that record in your record player here in the present moment, and it's playing it. And so the brain fires that fear repeatedly, but it's not doing it in the past, it's doing it in the present. So if we can train the brain to no longer play that old oldie of fear of flying, we don't want to get that record off the shelf. We don't want to play that song again. And instead, we want it to play a new pattern in each and every present moment. The fear then goes poof. It's no longer replayed in the present moment. I love this technique too. Again, so many applications for this technique, even beyond the fear of flying, but it's good for this one too. Another similar technique is a phobia release. It's kind of like a combination of both rewind and affect. It includes a lot of what we call future pacing, which is when we visualize how we want things to be for us in the future. We visualize ourselves completely calm and happy and proud of ourselves on the plane. We're actually enjoying the ride. We're looking out the window. We're marveling at the clouds and the sunset and the beauty of the sky. We're just enjoying ourselves, right? And so when we do this again and again and again and again in hypnotherapy, we're doing like what I talked about before. We help the brain become more familiar with that experience. And this is extra important with something like flying, because a flight could be like $1,000 round trip. And so it would be very expensive for your brain to get incredibly familiar with flying. And unless you're a business person who's traveling each week, you might not go on too many flights in your 3D physical reality, in real life, maybe a handful a year or less. So we need to find some other way to help your brain become familiar with going on a flight. It's not enough to just do that once or twice a year. That's not enough repetition. We need to practice that successful trip in our mind and go on many flights in our minds to build up that familiarity. Again, that's why most people feel safer in a car than they do on a plane, simply because they've gone on more car rides than they've gone on plane rides. So let's change that. Let's help you go on plane rides in your inner mind again and again and again. And the brain sees it as no different as when you do it in real life. And thank goodness hypnotherapy can help with that, right? Another great technique that we use is something called parts therapy. I have talked about parts in so many different contexts here on the show, but that's just simply because it's so powerful. We can talk to the part of your mind that fears flying, and we can understand it. We can understand where that fear is coming from, what it's trying to protect you from, when it originated. We can help it continue to protect you, because it's not like we don't want you protected. We always want you protected, but we can help it discover a way to do that in a way that actually benefits you, so that not only are you protected, but you're protected and you manifest the experience of fun travel memories too. It doesn't have to be one or the other. Now, I love doing parts therapy with fears. It's so much fun. I love talking to fear, because fear we think is going to be so scary, but it isn't. Fear is like full of like BS. It's just like a windbag. And just like when you talk to fear, you realize that fear has so many assumptions that it just accepts as truth. And one of my favorite things that will happen during like a fear parts therapy session is I'll talk to clients and they'll share with me what this fear is saying. And the client's just cracking up and we're both just laughing at it, because when you say it out loud, it's ridiculous. And when you talk to it and when you have it distanced from you, you can see it for what it truly is. Right? And you can be like, what are you talking about? You're insane. Like, that doesn't even make sense. And it loses all its power. And we literally, we can start to see the lies that fear tells us for what they are. And when you see that, the fear literally unravels before your very eyes. And in these sessions, we look at that fear. We stare it straight in the face. We stand up to it. We look it straight in the eye. And what it's kind of like an old schoolyard bully, right? When you do that, the fear shrinks. It fades into insignificance because it can't handle you seeing it for what it truly is. It wants you to run away from it, because if you're running away from it, you can't see it. You're not looking at it. You can't see it for the fraud that it is. And so when you look at it, you gain all your power and it loses all its power. And that is such an empowering feeling. I love the excitement that my clients feel when they realize that they are in control, not their fear. That's the definition of conquering a fear. Whew. So guys, that barely scratches the surface of the hypnotherapeutic techniques that you can employ for the fear of flying. Truly. Seriously, there are so many there. And I'll tell you this way. Different people respond strongly to different ones. Each person is unique. Each person holds various different beliefs, right? We all have different experiences. And so that's why it really is important to work with a professional hypnotherapist like myself to help you identify what's going to work best for you. and then to guide you through that process. So I hope that today's episode has put some perspective into this fear. I hope you were able to look that fear straight in the eye and see it for the lie that it is. We looked at it through a conscious mind's more sort of statistical lens. We looked at it from a manifestation point of view. In spirituality point of view, we dove into all the subconscious mind healing techniques that are available to you to employ. So if any of this resonated with you and you just know, Brittany, yes, I am ready to release this fear and I'm ready to have a margarita in my hand and sipping it on the beach somewhere beautiful that I'm going to fly to and experience some fun travel memories, I highly recommend that you check out my one-on-one hypnotherapy and coaching programs. For the cost of one flight, okay? One flight, which is a flight that you probably haven't taken in the past, so you've already saved yourself that money already. You could overcome this fear and then be able to take subsequent flights wherever you would like to go for the rest of your life. I mean, I have literally lost count of how many clients I have helped heal the fear of flying over the years. It's unfortunately something that comes up for a lot of people, but luckily they come to me. They recognize that there are tools that can help them overcome it. So I mean, I've seen clients who have held this fear for decades. And that's what's kind of so nice about the subconscious mind is that it doesn't matter how long you felt that way. It's getting that oldie off the shelf and it's replaying it in the present moment. So it doesn't matter. As long as we break that record and we say, no, we're not playing that one anymore, it doesn't matter how long you've had the record. It's broken. It's done. We're not listening to it anymore. So, it's just so funny. I've seen clients, all of a sudden get to go visit friends that they haven't seen forever in real life, which is super important, especially after the pandemic. They're going trips with their girlfriends. They're flying internationally. They're celebrating birthdays and big milestones. I mean, really, the ability to fly helps you start a brand new chapter in your life, right? And I think the biggest thing that I see with people is they just feel so dang proud of themselves that they didn't let this fear make their world so much smaller any longer, right? So if you're interested in experiencing that too, if that feels aligning to you, check out the link in my bio. Or not the link in my bio. I guess if you're on Instagram, it would be the link in my bio, but check out the show notes for this episode. I'll leave a link there, or you can just visit my website, brittanyhoops.com/private for more info on those programs. I really cannot wait to hear about the amazing adventures that are in store for you. I love when my clients will send me, pictures from their vacations. And, I had a client that sent me a picture from the Grand Canyon after she overcame the fear of flying, There's just so many things that you get to enjoy. Life has so much to offer you. There's so much to explore. The world is so big and it's so beautiful. And I just want you to experience it all firsthand. That's why we came to Earth, is to explore it and have memories and create and learn lessons and overcome challenges. Fear is so small in comparison. So let's get you out there. Let's manifest that amazing travel experience. Let's reach your true destination manifestation, quite literally, with zero fear. Okay, I am so rooting for you. I want you to enjoy the journey, travelers. And I'll catch you in the next episode.
I don't know.